as well. And so I always say it was God's impact for me to come back here and to give me the ability to reach so many people from the state of Arkansas. And I tell you that story because I'm in Arkansas, but I believe that the work that I do has global impact. I speak all over the world. I care for women and men all over the world, but I specialize in the care in breast cancer. That means that my daily work is treating breast cancer and educating on health. So cancer, in this year, the global cancer burden is expected to continue its rise, with projections indicating over 2 million new cases alone in the United States and a significant number of deaths. I just came from my clinic. I saw many patients with advanced breast cancer. You're thinking advanced, I'm thinking, why do I still see so many advanced breast cancer? Because we know that we can cure cancer or treat it and put people in remission if it's early. So why am I seeing today so many advanced breast cancer? It breaks my heart. Because, see, the state of Arkansas tried to deal with that by taking the options. Three southern states took that option so that patients and individuals can have health care insurance. So it's not the lack of access to health care insurance. Why do so many people not get treated for health diseases? It's fear, it's many things, but it leads to a high mortality rates, declining help in the workforce, and there's significant disparities that persist all over. And you never know what's in somebody else's path. So the person sitting by you, you're thinking, oh, maybe they can go to the doctor. Maybe they can't. You don't know those reasons. You don't know their struggle. So every day that I deal with this disease, I try to understand that individual. And I recognize that I may be the only doctor that they see, and they need other health care problems addressed. And so we try to do that. And so we have a program at the university that calls Health Initiatives and Disparities Program, where we reach out to address the health initiatives in patients across the state. One of my mentors decided that young in his career that he would go back to Africa because why? It matters. And he called me, he says, I need you to come to Africa. I need you to come to Africa and train other surgeons and doctors on how to care for women with cancer. I said, no, sir, no, Dr. Parham, I'm not coming to Africa. I'm going to stay right here in Arkansas. I got a lot of work I'm doing in Arkansas. I can't come to Africa. He said, you can't come to Africa. I said, no, sir, no, that's not what I'm going to do. He says, okay. He stopped talking for me for about 2 years, Dr. Grossbeck Parham. I don't know if you remember him. He would not answer my calls. He would not talk to me. And he says, I really have a problem with you not coming to Africa and trying to have some impact. I need you to come because I'm here and you don't know what I'm seeing. I'm not asking you to come to Africa to treat patients. I'm asking you to come to Africa to help me train to see patients. And I thought long and hard about it, and I made that call to him. And I've been going to Africa for the past 15 years, where I go and I train doctors on how to treat breast cancer. We go 4 times a year. It's called Friends of Africa. And it has been so important because I go there and we have all the technology, but if you don't know how to use the technology, guess what? It goes into this little graveyard of equipment. People give to other countries, but people don't know what to do with these things. They can't do it. And so over these past years, I've had the opportunity to train doctors to care for women with cancer. I've been to Rwanda. I've been to some amazing places and know the global impact. And if you go to the American Cancer Society, if you look at U.S. projections, and I told you the numbers, You look at the common cancer, it doesn't matter which cancer is breast, prostate, lung cancer. And what happens, they all are dying from this disease. Not because we don't have the best treatment in the world, it's just that we don't know how to give that treatment often. And there are just limitations in the resources that are available. And when I say the resources that are available, I don't know if you're aware that in the state of Arkansas, we have some of the highest cervical cancer death rates in African American women. Cervical cancer is a disease that you can prevent today if you give your child a vaccination, if they get HPV vaccination. You can prevent them from getting cervical cancer. So we have a vaccination program. Dr. Parham did the same thing in Africa. They showed that if they can vaccinate the young girls, you are not going to prevent them from having sex. It's not going to happen. So you have to prevent and do early diagnosis. It matters. What you do matters. And so this vision and word has to continue to grow across the world, that that's what we need to do. And if you think about it, the young adults need to pass the word. You don't have to be a doctor to provide education and information or change the outcomes for families. You just need to be passionate about doing so, and that's what you guys are here doing. So I could not sleep last night trying to figure out how I was going to make it here with all those patients in clinic expecting to see me to treat their cancers. So I got up very early. I got to the clinic. The patients weren't there because it doesn't open at 8:30, so I couldn't do anything about that. And we carefully saw each one of the patients there, and God's grace again. I looked up, and it was like 11:30, and I prepared Mr. Markell to speak and come with me, and I made it. But I do have to get back, and I'm so excited to be here. I need to know there's emerging therapies, but if we can't provide that emerging therapies, guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we find out in science. It doesn't matter how many publications I do. It doesn't matter if I'm an endowed professor, if I cannot share this information and change healthcare outcomes. It does not matter if you guys got all this knowledge and you cannot share it or change outcomes. So what are we going to do? We're going to all come together and try to make a difference. And so every opportunity that I get and I see, and I follow you on WhatsApp, I had to get WhatsApp, but it matters. And when I go to Africa, it matters because what I train them in, they're able to treat over 10,000 women. We were taught them how to find breast lumps by using ultrasound. They said, we can't do mammography on everybody. I said, I'm okay with that. Because if you can feel a lump, you can ultrasound it. And an ultrasound is a fairly cheap technology. Then you can biopsy it and you can treat. I just need to show you how to use it. And we did that. So if a woman gets a lump, they go in and see them and they ultrasound them. It's not a doctor that's ultrasounding. They know how to do the technology. They're better at it than I am. They can tell me, oh, doc, professor. They call me professor. Look, professor, I could see it. And they're finding cancers early. Not that you won't get cancer, but if you find it early, you can treat it, and you can change the outcomes. You can take a person from having to get chemotherapy and taken off work because they have an earlier diagnosis. So our emerging therapies don't matter, but you matter if we can change the world on what we're doing. And we all have to take that time to give back. It's for reasons that we're put in special places and change those outcomes. So I'm here to give you guys the state of cancer health. We have made some amazing advances in technology. We can treat cancers at the levels you can even imagine. We can treat cancers at the DNA level. But if the cancer is spread and the individual can't breathe, or the cancer is so advanced, it won't change anything. So I say to you, continue the work you're doing, because it matters. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I'm back in Arkansas after leaving, trying to find, but God knows what he has in store for you. You keep being passionate about changing the outcomes, because it matters in a huge way, not just in that individual, but for your economy and what you're going to do. And cancer, outside of heart disease, is the #1 killer. But you have to understand it's not just cancer, it's not just heart disease. It's the mind. You guys are going to hear from one of my colleagues, Dr. Rhonda Maddox. I hope she's here soon. But she's amazing. It's your mind and how you deal with that. Because you see this every day, and your fight is every day. And I'm so elated that you asked me to be the keynote address, because I needed to tell you guys that it matters. It matters that you are here. It matters that you want to change outcomes for everyone, and you're reaching across the globe. It matters what you did 20 years ago, and you're continuing to go. It matters, and I want to thank you guys for being here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and thank you for inviting me to be your keynote speaker. And if I can make any impact on what you're doing, I'd like to be there. Thank you all.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Ronda Henry Tillman. 2006, you helped us save a life. And for that one singular reason, I mean, we owe you a debt of gratitude. And you continually doing it. And I love the fact that, you mentioned Dr. Parham. You know that he's very, very passionate. From day one, even when I founded the AWHPI Global Foundation, the African Women's Health Project International, he was one of the first people that I consulted on how I needed to put this together, because I needed for this to happen, not only for our community, not only for our state, not only for this nation, but also for the world. So thank you so much for what you do. And I think at this time, lunch is going to be served, so I'm going to just little housekeeping. And the next thing that we're going to do, we're waiting for the mental health panel. Oh, they're here. Oh, she's already here. Oh, my God. Okay, now it's complete. Okay, so the next segment we're going to do, we're just going to go ahead and move right into it, because all these healthcare professionals, all of them, they left what they were doing to come and join us, because they understand the importance of this information that we're trying to pass on. Whether we're 2 people in this room or we're thousands in this room, this message is already being live streamed, so it's going to get to millions of people. So I just thank you so much for your dedication and for your sacrifice to come over here and join us for this afternoon. So this time around now, we have the segment we call the Fireside Chat. And the Fireside Chat conversation is going to be on mental health. And of course, when you're talking about mental health, you have to go to the source. You have to go to the professionals, the people that God has endowed so much knowledge into them that this is what they live, breathe this, day in, day out. So at this point, I'd like to call on, for our mental health fireside chat, I'd like to call on our moderator and the presenter, our speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me read a little introduction. Our moderator is none other than Ms. Kenya Heddings. She's a native of Little Rock, Arkansas. She is the executive director of the Arkansas Minority Health Commission. So glad to see. She received a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a minor in Chemistry and African American Literature from Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, and a Master's in Public Health from Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine in New Orleans, Louisiana. She's going to be joined by our key speaker, the presenter, Dr. Rhonda Maddox. Dr. Maddox is America's, they call her the America's go-to psychiatrist. As a top requested transformative physician speaker, our medical expertise and wise counsel has been featured in popular media like Money, Forbes magazine, HuffPost, the New York Times, and Newsweek, as well as respected academic journals. She has served as a medical media consultant to Hollywood's writers and producers, as well as policy advisor on Capitol Hill's elite, including the United States former Dean of the House of Representatives and the longest-serving member, John Dingell Jr., who is credited with authoring the House version of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. My daughter will love this. You know, my daughter is an attorney on patient, they work directly with this privacy law. She works in privacy law. So ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming for the fireside chat between Ms. Kenya Heddings and Dr. Rhonda Maddox.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, that's better. Thank you all for having us today. We're going to be having a fireside chat, a conversation about mental health. Now, at the end of this conversation, we're going to open it up for questions. So I want everyone to pay attention, put your thinking caps on, get out some pen and paper, and jot down your questions, your thoughts, your ideas, and your suggestions. So before we get into it, Dr. Maddox, you are America's favorite psychiatrist.
I think so.
You are. Yes, you are. So let's talk a little bit about your career path and what led you to choose psychiatry as a profession.
When I was in the 8th grade, I had a career orientation teacher tell me whatever it is that you would consider doing for free that would bring you joy, you should consider making that a part of your career, because whether the money is there or not, you will enjoy what you're doing, and people will see how well you do what you're doing, and the money will come. And for me, as an 8th grader, as a 9th grader, people were confiding in me about all manner of evil that was happening to them, in part because I was not judgmental, or at least I didn't appear to be judgmental on the outside, and because I could keep a secret. And so when I discovered that there were people who got paid to listen, I said, sign me up. So that's how I got interested.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. And so I want to thank Her Royal Highness, first of all, for inviting us to be here on such a worthy occasion, celebrating 20 years of AWHPI. Congratulations. But also I want us, thank you, yes, clap it up, yes. And here's to 20 more years. I also want us to acknowledge and know that not only is July, we're celebrating the 20th year of AWHPI, but also July is National Minority Mental Health Month. Raise your hand if you knew that. Okay, great. So some of you have learned at least one thing today. And so we know that National Minority Health Month, Minority Mental Health Month was created through the advocacy work of B.B. Moore Campbell, the late B.B. Moore Campbell, who was an author and an advocate for mental health rights around the United States. And in 2008, some legislation was passed to formally acknowledge July as National Minority Mental Health Month. And so we have been commemorating this occasion for almost 20 years. And so to that end, we're just going to talk a little bit, and I want to give you guys some statistics to kind of help us to level set as we begin the conversation. Would that be okay? Great. So we know that in 2020, suicide was the third leading cause of death for Black and African American individuals ages 15 to 24. We also know that African American men were 4 times higher than their white counterparts to try to die by suicide. In addition to that, we know that we're talking about economic empowerment today. We also know that African Americans living below the poverty level are twice as likely to report serious psychological distress compared to those above twice the poverty level. So we know that there's a connection between one's economic circumstances and sometimes their mental health or their emotional health. And I see you nodding your head, Dr. Maddox. Okay. And then in addition to that, we know that 4.2% of African Americans routinely express sadness and hopelessness, in contrast to 2.6% of non-Hispanic whites. Routinely, not just, on 1 or 2 occasions, but routinely. And then in addition to that, we know that 21% of African Americans reported having a mental illness. Only 39% received mental health treatment compared to 52% of non-Hispanic whites. And so as Dr. Rhonda Henry Tillman talked about, sometimes it's having access to care that can be detrimental sometimes. And so with that, Dr. Maddox, first series of questions. What unique mental health challenges do minorities face that aren't as prevalent in other populations that you have seen in your work?
I would say the way we experience mental health symptoms can be different from others. When you think, when I hear Blacks talk about mental health issues, and when I'm inquiring about it, I use a different language. So I don't ask if you're depressed. I ask if your spirits have been low, if you've been feeling blue, because there's something about the word depression that just does not feel right. When I'm approaching the subject, I don't start with their feelings. I start with more somatic complaints, because Blacks are more likely to talk about physical symptoms. They're more likely to talk about not being able to sleep, not being able to concentrate, having headaches, having physical complaints. So that is what I tend to lead with, because if I ask about how you're sleeping, that doesn't sound like I think it's in your head. That doesn't sound like I think you're making it up. And sleep is so interwoven into so many conditions. Many people can't sleep if they have PTSD because they're having flashbacks. Perhaps they can't sleep because they're paranoid and they're checking the locks. They can't sleep because they're up worried. And so when I ask the question about sleep, that then gives me an opportunity to ask, are you in pain? Is that why you can't sleep? Are you worried? And that can lead me in there. And then when I'm talking about suicide, Blacks will associate suicide with hell, with what have you. And so they're not as comfortable saying, yes, I'm actively thinking about taking my life. So I will introduce the topic around, have you just felt like giving up? Have you felt like if you just woke up one day and you were not here anymore, you'd be okay with that? So I don't start with the heavy. I start and I kind of work my way there. And many times I don't even start with just the barrage of questions that doctors ask you that make you feel like, I need to put my guard up. I start with just your life, and I'm getting a social history, but it feels like I'm getting to know you and you don't feel as guarded.
And I'm glad that you mentioned physical health and how the way we feel physically can be sometimes tied to our mental health and our emotional health, because a lot of times I think we don't make the connection between the two. And so knowing that, you feel stress in your shoulders, or you're having these headaches, or your back aches, could be a connection to mental health and needing to get some additional help for oneself.
And your energy is a part of me assessing if you have depression or not. So if I am trying to diagnose you with clinical depression, there are a few things that I'm looking for. I'm looking at your sleep. Is it increased or decreased? Are you sleeping too much, sleeping too little? I'm looking at your enjoyment and interest in activities that you traditionally enjoy. Are you someone who's normally outgoing and now you're isolating and you're staying to yourself? I'm looking at if you have an unhealthy amount of guilt or insecurities or that kind of stuff. I'm looking at your energy. Are you now tired all the time? Your ability to concentrate, your appetite, if you're not eating and you normally enjoy. I'm looking at, are you moving slowly? Sometimes, like, depression is palpable. You know, are you having suicidal ideations? And I say sometimes, because sometimes people can be functionally depressed and you can't tell. And I say that because I recall a time when someone died by suicide, and I was totally flabbergasted because he didn't look suicidal. So I need you to understand that you sometimes think you understand what depression looks like, but it doesn't look like what you always think it looks like.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. Someone doesn't look like they're suicidal, which leads me to think, what does someone who is suicidal, I mean, what does that look like? It doesn't really have, you know, a face or a physical description, because it could really be anything and anybody.
There is someone who I'm not as familiar with, but some of you who like Ellen. Ellen had a DJ who used to dance all the time. And I can't remember.
DJ Twitch.
DJ Twitch.
Yes.
And I had never heard of DJ Twitch until he died. But afterwards, I had the opportunity to look at the pictures of he and his wife dancing, and just how he looked, and everybody was baffled. I had no idea. And you remember me telling you that I had the one person who died by suicide, he didn't look, he would come into my office, he was smiling, trying to steal my candy. He didn't look it. And so I remember one time I was with a patient, and I'm a person of faith, and faith guides me a lot. And so I was with a patient, and I asked her how she was doing, and she was a person of faith, and she was like, blessed and highly favored, or some religious colloquialism. And so as she's talking, she looks energetic, she looks happy, but in my spirit, I'm hearing she's suicidal. And I was like, no, I'm looking, like, I see her. And so I just couldn't shake that. And I said, I hear what you're saying, but in my spirit, I feel like this is going to be the last time I'm going to see you. And she just started bawling. And so she went from blessed and highly favored to, and so sometimes people look happy because they've mastered the mask. We were wearing masks long before COVID, and many are still wearing masks even though you can't see it. And so they've mastered the mask, and you may not be able to tell until you sit with someone and have a conversation. And it's so challenging to do in these times, because when I'm walking through the airport, when I go to the airport, I love talking to people. And now I see people. And so we're not making eye contact. We're not connecting. We're not, you know, I can look in your eyes, and she smiles all the time, and sometimes she'll tell you out, like, are you okay? Because I see the smile, but I see the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul, and we don't always get that.
And I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because lots of times, over the past couple of years, there's been this thing about taking your cape off, particularly as it relates to Black women, that we have to be all the things to everyone all the time. Like, it never stops.